Who would have thought that moving away from the terrifying 6-episode event format and structuring a TV show like an actual TV show would result in one of the best Marvel projects to date? It really makes you wonder, man. California! Marvel Studios' newest series, Wonder Man, is finally here. All 8 episodes at once, believe it or not, and I could not have loved it more. Thank God they didn't turn this into a tax write-off, because we would have missed out on this genuinely great series that I can't recommend enough, and I would have ended up storming the studio to avenge my GOAT Destin Daniel Cretton. What a run he's having with Marvel, man. He simply does not miss, and the work he and Andrew Guest did on Wonder Man is nothing short of wonderful. California! Okay, that's all the low-hanging fruit out of the way. Now we can dive into my non-spoiler review of the series before we talk spoilers in the back half of the video. Wonder Man is easily one of my new favorite MCU projects. It's a meta love letter to the film industry and a beautiful story of friendship that left the biggest smile on my face when the credits rolled. You can really tell how much everybody working on this has a genuine appreciation for cinema, as there's so much thought and care put into every single frame. This is a show that wears its heart on its sleeve, as that love for the genre bleeds through with every line and creative decision. It's a show made by people who love film, for people who love film, and just so happens to have a superhero at the center of it. Using the MCU as a backdrop and telling a low-stakes story about a guy with powers navigating this universe was a stroke of genius. It's unlike anything else in the genre, but not in the sense that it's afraid to be a superhero show. If anything, it's unapologetically earnest and proud of the fact that it's a superhero show. But if I were to compare it to anything else, it wouldn't even be another comic book project. It's basically Marvel's take on the studio, which is very funny considering they shot Wonder Man before the studio and have been sitting on it the whole time. The only difference between the two is that the studio is much more of a cynical take on the frustrations of the film industry, while Wonder Man is a celebration of how film brings us together. It's a series dedicated to chasing that euphoric high you feel after watching a life-changing movie and about the people who make that happen. There is an overwhelming sense of passion for these characters that bleeds through the screen and is really appreciated. I love how Wonder Man takes a look at these massive productions through the perspective of somebody who genuinely cares about what they do. And the meta aspects of the story are handled in such a fun way, often giving us a look into how difficult and exciting the film industry can be. The series is definitely full of satire, as they openly mock the studio system, some of the people who inhabit it, and directly comment on superhero fatigue. But it's people like Simon Williams who drive the point home about how it's passion that fuels all of these projects at the end of the day. It's a really heartwarming take on Hollywood that helps you fall in love with this new corner of the MCU. It's not a superhero series filled with superheroes doing traditional superhero stuff. It's a superhero show about how much we love superheroes and what those stories mean to people. Without saying too much, I felt seen in ways I wasn't expecting in this show. It genuinely touched my heart. Simon might be the most relatable character in the entire universe to me right now, and that's not just because he loves superheroes and doesn't know how to talk to people, but the relatability of his character really helped me connect with what I saw on screen. Wonder Man is such a charming, thoughtful, and funny slice of life that thrives as a character study. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II gives a truly inspired performance as Simon. He's going to be a fan favorite right away. The way he's able to balance Simon's commitment and care for his craft with his more self-destructive and isolating tendencies is handled incredibly well. He feels like a fully fleshed out and three-dimensional character who you can't help but root for. From his very first scene, the show makes it clear how desperate he is to make it as a creative for the love of the game alone. So seeing him constantly beat down gives us a wholesome underdog story. He's not a perfect man, and there is definitely a lot he needs to work through, but Simon genuinely cares about the work that he does and the people in his life, even if he doesn't always know how to show it. Yahya does a really great job bringing those qualities to life and making it all feel so natural. It's also really impressive to me when an actor can act like someone who is having a hard time acting. There's so many layers to a performance like that, but it always feels organic from him. It's the little things he does that go a long way in showing how Simon is always overthinking but trying his best no matter what the situation is. But for as good as he is on his own, this show is a buddy comedy, and it's when he's with Sir Ben Kingsley that they both shine together. Yahya and Ben's chemistry is electric. I could watch them bond over film for hours and never get bored. Their flaws complement each other in really interesting ways as they make each other whole. We get to see them lift the other up as the series puts the importance of friendship front and center. It was such a great idea to give them a buddy comedy and a really beautiful way to naturally utilize the cinematic universe. Their friendship feels so authentic and genuinely had me tearing up by the end. I was not expecting the emotional core of this series to be so strong, but Trevor Slattery of all characters had me ready to cry. That is, when he wasn't making me laugh, because he might just be the funniest character of all time. More than just being comedic relief, Trevor actually gets to be a character this time around, and dare I say one of the best written post-Endgame. We get to explore the ramifications of him pretending to be the Mandarin and how he was taken advantage of. Wonder Man basically acts as a second chance for him as he's given this new lease on life, but it all comes at the expense of having to spy on Simon for the Department of Damage Control. That struggle of whether he will prioritize his freedom over his friendship is handled very well and helps to make Trevor a really likable character. Sorry, it's still insane to me that the Sir Ben Kingsley is in the MCU and playing a failed actor of all characters, but my god does he make it work. Above all else, Wonder Man has finally vindicated the Iron Man 3 defender in me, and for that I am so grateful. The Mandarin twist continues to get better with age. I will not tolerate any slander on it from here on out. It's so cool how Marvel is able to take these more controversial moments and build them out over the years in projects like Shang-Chi and now Wonder Man to retroactively make their other movies better. That is how you build out a cinematic universe and do it right. Some people might be bothered by the lack of action in the series, especially considering that there's one fight scene in the entire show, but I think that's one of Wonder Man's greatest strengths. This is a slice-of-life comedy series exploring the Hollywood system that just so happens to be set in the MCU. As far as I'm concerned, we didn't need to see any action scenes. The one we did get had some sick moves in it though, so I do appreciate that we got a taste of what Simon is capable of. Still, for a show that was clearly marketed as a tale of a struggling actor with secret superpowers, it's a nice change of pace to have something with stakes this low that is entirely driven by character. There aren't any twist villains added in for the sake of drama or forced conflicts shoehorned in just to give us a fight scene because it's a superhero project. This is a character story through and through, and the payoff comes from Simon's emotional catharsis by the end of it. There is no action scene that would have made this show better than the character beats we got between Simon and Trevor. It is so refreshing to see Marvel have this kind of restraint and trust their characters will keep people interested, because they absolutely do. I also really need to appreciate the visuals of this show because oh my god, I love how this looks. Cinematographers Brett Powlek and Armando Salas do a phenomenal job bringing each director's vision to life, all while keeping a uniform style across all 8 episodes. I especially love the naturalistic approach to the cinematography as it complements the slice-of-life aesthetic of the series really well. The colors and contrast pop on screen, and I love how intentional the choices are as vibrancy stands out. It's lit really well too, especially at night, which Marvel struggles with at times. I just wish real life looked this beautiful all the time instead of this hopeless gray world we're stuck in. It takes a lot of swings with the visuals, but they all pay off to create a show that stands out from the rest of the MCU, and also maybe even stands above a lot of other projects as one of their most beautiful. I'm a very big fan of how they use the camera as well. It's not just static as they're moving it around to make the scenes feel alive, with some great shot composition to match. It's got a very artsy aesthetic for a Marvel project, but the film nerd in me really appreciates that. It's just another way they complement the tone of the series to make it look and feel like prestige TV. So you know what, yeah, I'll say it. Wonder Man is prestige TV. Fight me. It's written just as well as it's shot, which says a lot. And I would be remiss if I didn't shout out my man Joel P. West's soundtrack for this show. I've loved his work going back to the short-term 12 days and how he was able to transform his style for Shang-Chi, which he does once again here. The score is very whimsical and enchanting as it highlights the charming nature of the series with a real golden age Hollywood feel to it. What's really interesting though is that Wonder Man knows when and when not to use music. The power of silence is heavily felt here as they let you sink into a moment and feel the raw energy of a scene. It's not over-reliant on the score to do all the heavy lifting as they let the actors do the talking, because that's literally what actors do. You don't need music blaring into our ears all the time to get the point across, and Wonder Man gets that. Sometimes the most powerful score for a scene is just pure silence. Oh, also, the show has some really great needle drops. They perfectly fit the tone and headspace for these characters, but even more so, the music just feels right at home in a series about Hollywood. Special shout out to the inclusion of Phantom Planet's California. Yes, the theme song from the OC, which had me sit up in my seat but still didn't feel out of place at all. This show has such a great musical palette. But here's the thing. If I had any major complaint, it's that I think the series could have benefited from one more episode. We spend so much time following Simon's journey to get to the point where he's a leading man in a Wonder Man blockbuster, but the show basically skips over the big budget filmmaking process. I feel like there's a lot of rich story to be told there, especially with Simon's mindset at that point, and it would have only benefited the series to show us more of that, especially for a project that was marketed so much around a superhero making a superhero movie. I was just a little sad to not see that chapter of his life. I get the story is about the journey, not the destination, and the literal friend he made along the way, which is beautiful in its own right. But the absence of that friend on set would have gone the extra mile to show how close they've come. And for an actor like Simon, who cares so deeply about every character he plays, I think it would have been interesting to see the process of him making a film about his favorite character. With how the season ends, it doesn't seem like there's much of a chance to circle back around to another fictional Wonder Man movie, so it feels like a missed opportunity to me that we didn't get that full payoff. That being said, it's still one of the strongest finales in the entire MCU and does a great job tying together the most important themes of the series. Structurally, Wonder Man dares to ask the question, what if we just made a TV show that was structured like a TV show, and my god are we better off for it? It's crazy to think that it took Marvel 5 years to get to this point, but hey, better late than never. As this slice of life comedy, Wonder Man is actually structured like a TV show would be. They're not exactly standalone in the way that a show like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, another series by Andrew Guest, is, as you can watch any episode out of order. There's definitely a sequential journey as each episode gets Simon one step closer to his goal, but they are still self-contained enough as each episode showcases a very interesting part of Simon's life trying to become an actor. There has been a lot of talk about the fact that Marvel dropped all 8 episodes at once, but after binging the series, I feel like that could have been the best possible choice for it. For as much as I would have loved to see it build week after week and more people get interested as we're talking about it for the next 2 months rather than just probably a few days at most, the binge format definitely fits the story they're telling, as it's very small scale and a slow burn to an extent. Not every episode is going to be 5 stars as we experience this slice of life format. So while I would have loved to see people talk about Wonder Man for longer, I completely understand why they dropped it like this. I just have to hope Marvel keep promoting it from here on out so people don't just forget about the show, because it is so good and I need everybody and their mother to watch this. Whatever you're doing, go to your mom right now and tell her to watch Wonder Man. I don't care if you don't think she's gonna like it, she will. You can give her my guarantee. Wonder Man succeeds on every level and is a massive win for Marvel Studios. They tried to tell us it would be a big dub, and wow did it exceed all expectations I had. That's a very bad joke, but it is a great series, okay? I can't say enough good things about it. It's so charming and full of life as we get to explore this new corner of the MCU through the eyes of well-defined and interesting characters. I honestly don't know if I've ever had more fun watching a Marvel show. I was actively laughing out loud multiple times per episode, which is a testament to just how funny the show is. Well, that is, until they just randomly decide to jump scare you, which catches me completely off guard. If you've watched the show, you know the scene I'm talking about. My heart is still racing from it. As evil as that may have been, I do really love how this show sprinkles in elements of horror every now and then as a way to show the stakes of what these powers can do. Not only is it terrifying for Simon to be exposed as an enhanced individual, but then they give you good reason to fear what these superheroes are capable of. It is so sick and really well done. I cannot wait to rewatch this whole show as soon as I finish editing this video. That's basically my motivation to work as fast as possible right now. There's so much to love about it, and even more that I'm sure I'll find on every subsequent rewatch as this becomes a new comfort show to me. Okay, now for the stressful part of giving Wonder Man a rating. I think I would give this a very respectful 9 out of 10. It's one of my new favorite superhero projects, and I need them to make a second season so bad. The fact that they haven't already announced one is sickening to me. Alright, on that note, it's time for the spoilers section of the video. Here we go. This is your last warning. Go watch Wonder Man at least 4 more times to guarantee us a second season, then come back here to listen to me dive further into the show and answer if it's the best MCU series. Alright, that's enough waiting. Time for spoilers. Yeah, terrifying, right? God, sorry about that, but I had to make sure I wasn't the only person who was about to have a heart attack thinking about that moment. What a rush though, right? Pumps me up with enough adrenaline to talk about all the spoilers from this show. For starters, we got a f***ing cloak and dagger connection in this? Hello? Everybody should be talking about this. I have never been so alive in my life. In the masterful 4th episode titled Doorman, we see him get his powers the good old-fashioned way after touching a mysterious black ooze that turns his body into a living portal and gives him phasing abilities. That ooze was created by none other than the Roxxon Corporation, the MCU's leading cause of oil spills, other environmental disasters, and superpowers that played an insanely important role in the single most underrated superhero show of all time, Cloak and Dagger. Yes, they had their own show a lifetime ago, it was amazing, and I am convinced that Wonder Man is directly connected to it. In the comics, Doorman is a mutant, meaning that they went out of their way to give him this new origin for the MCU. They specifically chose to reference Roxxon here, and considering how their experiments directly led to Tandy Bowen and Tyrone Johnson getting superpowers, I can't see this as anything but intentional. We know they were messing around with the Dark Force, and it's likely that this was the same kind of ooze in the explosion that gave Tyrone his abilities. I believe we've got a reference on our hand, folks, and one that makes me unbelievably happy. You do not understand how long I have waited for this. I was one of the 8 people keeping that show on the air for 2 seasons, and I have been dying to see them back in my life again, and this could be our first indication that Marvel are at least considering them. Plus, the fact that Destin Daniel Cretton is responsible for this and is in charge of MCU Spider-Man now? I need to see Cloak and Dagger appear in Tom's next trilogy so bad. I would actually kill for it. Do you hear that, Destin? Just tell me who you want dead, and they are done. I am just that desperate to see them again, and so grateful that Wonder Man made this connection. It was the absolute last thing I expected, but exactly what I needed to fuel my agendas. On top of that incredible reference, there are a ton of other specifics I need to talk about, so it's time for the return of my world-famous segment, a list of stuff I really liked but couldn't find a natural spot to include in the video. I promise one day I'll think of an actual title for it, but today is not that day. First of all, the celebrity cameos in this show are great. I don't think I ever expected to see Joey Pants appear in a Marvel series, but my jaw dropped when he appeared on screen. A celebrity appearing as a parody of themselves is always going to be one of my favorite tropes, and I love how they use him in this as this pseudo out-of-touch celebrity who's only in it for money. It's such a great way to contrast Simon's arc. Also, his line saying, "If I was British, they would have knighted me by now," and the immediate cut to Ben Kingsley might be the funniest joke of the entire season. The only thing that might be better than that is how they recast Trevor with Joey Pants, which is a great payoff to the bit where Trevor accused him of stealing a previous role. Also, we get an entire episode where Josh Gad plays a big role in it, and I gotta give him credit because Josh Gad gives his best performance as asshole Josh Gad who can't act. Any actor who's willing to make fun of themselves like that always gets points in my book, and I think he does a really good job playing this egotistical celebrity. We also got a lot of celebrity name drops in this show, which is always funny to know who exists in the MCU, like Leonardo DiCaprio being in consideration for Wonder Man, which is very funny considering that he does not want to do this superhero stuff. But my favorite one by far is when Simon reads off the review that critic gave to Joseph Gordon-Levitt because they slander him as this horrible person. Amazing bit, but I have to wonder, what was the pigeon incident? Did Joseph Gordon-Levitt that pigeon? What was he doing with it? Okay, moving on from that because I really don't want to think about it more than I have to. I really loved how we got to see Trevor's audition to play the Mandarin as he workshops that character in real time. I think it's really funny that Aldrich Killian held legit auditions for this. He completely commit to the bit of casting an actor to play the Mandarin, and I have to respect that. Okay, hard turn into the next thing I want to talk about, but the ending of episode 5 was pure chaos, and I loved it so much. The way the entire episode builds and builds and builds until we get this beautifully insane crescendo at the end had me losing my mind. So just a quick recap of the sequence of events for this episode. Simon is caught on camera using his powers and his career is in jeopardy, so he's got to hunt down this kid and get the footage back. But to get the footage back, Simon has to get this kid's bike back from a group of people who are currently making candy, and all while that's happening, the drug dealer who harassed Trevor in the beginning of the episode hunts him down and holds a kid hostage. So the police arrive, and as we have this standoff, a neighbor calls the people inside drug dealers, so now everything's escalating really quickly, and it all erupts into the funniest possible conclusion as Simon gets his call back right as an actual shootout starts and he has to flee the scene. Come on, that is so peak. I could not stop laughing. It is a really fun side quest that spiraled into entertaining madness and exactly the kind of thing I want to see in Marvel TV. It is a huge benefit of the 8-episode format where they have this room to breathe and we can have an entire episode dedicated to Simon trying to keep his powers a secret. And for the MCU, which for so long has been so adverse to doing any secret identity stories, I think it was really refreshing to see the lengths a hero is willing to go for to keep their powers a secret. Alright, now here's the thing you've all been waiting for me to talk about. Sam Wilson's Captain America is referenced in this show. I jumped out of my seat when he got name dropped.
I love Captain America. He is the full package.
Well, you're really just like a regular dude who can throw a shield, right?
Simon might not see the vision right now, but that's okay. I just need them to meet so Sam can prove him wrong and show how cool a guy throwing a shield can be. But it made me smile so much. Alright, and then one last thing I want to mention in this completely unstructured section is that I think this is by far the best use use of damage control in a Marvel project, they're finding their own identity more and more with each appearance, and it works very well to make them a proper antagonist to Simon in the series. I love how they're used as this wedge between Simon and Trevor's friendship, and we actually get some more depth for Agent Cleary as it's made clear that he's under a lot of pressure from this failing company. He might be a total asshole, but he's my asshole. No, shouldn't have said that one. The MCU is rapidly heading towards an anti-superpowered status quo, with powers being banned from Hollywood and damage control being sent to hunt these people down, which only makes me feel like they're setting the stage for the X-Men and this anti-mutant agenda, and that is beyond exciting. Which I think is especially interesting because Simon is definitely supposed to be a mutant in this show, right? They completely skip over his origin, which is understandable considering it's kinda hard to do the whole Zemo experimentation thing anyways, but they do everything in their power to confirm he's immune without ever outright saying it. The fact that he miraculously survived this fire as a kid is a huge indication to me that he's had these powers from birth, especially with Andrew Guest confirming they had those conversations. It feels like to me they just weren't ready to confirm it, so they took it out completely. But I don't mind the change at all, or really any of the changes they make to Simon's character. The core idea of him is still there as this Hollywood actor with superpowers, and I like that he's still morally gray with an edge to him. There's a bit of selfishness and ego in there, and he's more than willing to break the law multiple times, which is great considering that Wonder Man started out as a villain in the comics before he was reformed as a member of the West Coast Avengers. And in spite of his narcissistic qualities, it's not like he's a bad guy at all, as I love the amount of depth they were able to give him. As a whole, Simon's character arc in this series meant a lot to me. I mentioned earlier in the video that I saw myself in this series, and Simon directly reflected a lot of my own life experiences. The fact that he fell in love with the superhero genre because his dad introduced him to his own passion was beautiful, and is exactly the same thing that happened for me. The way I got into comics and superheroes was my dad loved it and introduced me to this wonderful world, and ever since then I've been a massive fan. He had literally passed down what was left of his comic collection to me, and it's one of my most treasured possessions. I have probably seen more movies with my dad than anyone else on the planet. I still remember going to see every Marvel movie with him in theaters as a kid. Those are special and irreplaceable core memories to have. So seeing that on screen was really powerful to me and helped me connect with Simon a lot as his driving motivation over the course of the series. It's definitely a huge reason as to why I love this show so much. I've never seen myself more in a character than watching Simon care about something he grew up on with an important connection that got him to a place like this. I especially love that Simon is so determined to become an actor because his dad saw that potential in him as a kid and he just wanted to make him proud. It's such a sweet motivation, and that one scene does a really good job recontextualizing Simon's entire journey over the course of the series, especially when you take into account the fact that his dad died, which clearly shattered the family. Now Simon has nobody to share his biggest interest with and is constantly living in his brother's shadow as he went towards a real career while Simon pursued his passion because he couldn't let his father's vision die with him. It's such a beautiful and sad character detail that informs every decision Simon makes over the course of the series. And it hurts even more knowing that his own family doesn't support his career. He never got the love he needed from the people around him, and it closed him off from the rest of the world. That really tugged on my heartstrings because I know what it's like to have that kind of relationship with someone, and then to imagine that being taken away, not having anyone to share that with is, I can't even put into words how much that would hurt someone. So knowing that this Wonder Man project was able to bring him and his brother closer together again really got me in that last episode. It was their father's death that drove these two brothers apart, but it was their father's mutual love for the genre that brought them back together. It's also hilarious to think that Simon's brother is going to become the Grim Reaper. Like, this dude in khakis is gonna have a scythe and a stupid, awesome hat one day, and I think that's amazing. The more the series went on, I was really worried he would become this surprise twist villain, and I'm so glad they just dedicated an entire season to building out the relationship between him and Simon, because now when he does become the Grim Reaper, it's gonna hit so hard and really hurt knowing that they just patched their relationship. It's stuff like that that really makes me want to see season 2, because there is a world of potential in his own family that we have yet to explore. If you want to take Simon's relatability a step further though, the fact that he can't fit in with other people, that hits a little too close to home. This idea that Simon was obsessed with film and often lived in his own world because he was so alone as a kid and could only connect to movies? It's really sad, but does a great job setting up how important acting is to Simon, as he used film as this form of escapism because it reminded him of his relationship with his father. But in doing so, he never really learns how to talk to other people or connect with other people because he put everything in his life into perfecting his craft to make his dad proud. Listen, I'm not the most social person. I run a YouTube channel where I talk about comic books. I think you can understand that. that. And I feel like I spent most of my childhood in my own world obsessed with this hyperfixation, but at least I had my dad to bond with this stuff over. Poor Simon had nothing, and just thinking about that made me connect with him on another level outside of the show itself, because I know how much that would really tear someone apart. And the fact that his inability to connect with others directly influences his decisions as an actor is really great character writing. Simon is emotionally closed off as a person, yet can only connect with a character if he understands them on an emotional level. It's this beautifully tragic character flaw we see him correct over the course of the season. He dives deep into the roles he plays, even going as far as making up entirely new backstories because he's deathly afraid of putting even an ounce of himself out there. This mindset that nobody wanted to be his friend as a kid, so why would anyone want to see him on screen? Simon is constantly afraid of being his true self and putting that identity out there, which is reflected really well with his superpowers and how he hides them from the rest of the world. What I love so much about the superhero genre is that they're able to physically manifest the emotions we all face in a very interesting way using superpowers. Using Simon's powers as a metaphor for his own feelings and self-image was a genius idea. We get to take them hand in hand, and while we think on the surface this is just a show about a guy trying not to show his true powers, we learn along the way how this is really a show about a guy who's afraid to be himself, and those powers are just one part of that. It's another reason why I'm so confident he's a mutant, because that fear of not showing your powers is prime X-Men storytelling. He is so scared of letting anybody in, but it's only once he finally puts himself out there and into these roles that his acting career takes off. It is such a beautiful message that being yourself is the best thing you can be, no matter who you are, and that is what will attract other people was so inspirational to me, and maybe the exact kind of thing I needed to hear right now. When you think about it, the real villain of this show was just overthinking, and that more than anything else hit a little too close to home. Simon's anxiety and his fear of ever letting another person in is the most interesting part of his character, and I really love the payoff we get to that entire part of his arc. The way it all comes to a head in episode 7 as Simon is getting this profile done by an entertainment journalist who will assassinate his character if she finds any flaws is the perfect kind of foil that forces Simon to confront his worst habits. Watching Simon stress over the thought of the people in his life saying any negative thing about him, only to learn how much they love him in the process, was so wholesome. Simon stresses over his ex-girlfriend, which forces him to confront her and mend that relationship as he realizes she always knew he had powers. For a half second, I did think they were going to do a joke where she always thought he was gay, but her secretly knowing he always had superpowers was more impactful. What really got me, though, was how scared Simon was that his brother was going to trash him, knowing that they had this bad relationship. But the fact that his brother said nothing but nice things about him, letting Simon know that his family actually does care, they just have a hard time showing it just as much as him, was such a well-written moment as we get to see Simon understand in real time that he's not as alone as he thought he was. But of course, things can't be too nice, and the pendulum swings the other way as the one person he trusted in his life, Trevor, is the one who betrays him that very episode when Simon finds out about the spying, and it is the biggest tragedy of them all. Finding out that his first genuine friendship blossomed out of a careless lie? The very moment we found out Trevor was working with damage control, I knew that reveal was coming the entire season, so there was always this sense of tension, but man, they did it in the most heartbreaking way. That was the most justified crash out of all time from Simon. Wonder Man does such a good job showing us the importance of friendship to Simon, and if there's one scene that really contextualizes this tragedy more than anything else, it's when Simon's mom told Trevor about how Simon was as a child, when he told her, "Thank you for loving me, mommy." That line broke me. How the people around Simon didn't realize he felt alone until it was too late, completely recontextualizing just how important this friendship was with Trevor. As someone who understands him, supports him, his dreams, and is able to actually relate to him, it's the quiet moments like that which make this series to me. These feel like real people dealing with genuine problems, and I only want to see the best for them. Simon and Trevor's friendship is by far the best thing about this entire show. If you can't tell already by how much I'm yapping about it, I really love and relate to the themes of isolation in this series. It's so beautiful to me watching Simon open up to Trevor and finally be able to share his love of film with someone in the same way that he did with his dad all those years ago. Trevor unconditionally supported him to the point where Simon trusted him enough to bring him home. The entire episode at his mom's birthday is maybe the most important one in the show, as we really get to see this bond strengthen. knowing that Trevor came to that party with the intentions of spying on Simon and then leaves it, cutting off contact with damage control because he realizes he doesn't want to hurt this guy and genuinely cares about him. It's so beyond touching how much Trevor helps Simon break out of his shell and become a better actor, as he teaches him that it's your life experiences that make you a good actor. The good and especially bad things you've experienced in your life help you connect to these characters much more than any manufactured backstory you give them. It's why Trevor is such a perfect character to pair Simon up with in this series, because he can see firsthand someone using their past trauma to make them a better performer. Trevor inspires Simon to embrace being himself, while Simon takes Trevor seriously and sees him for more than just the Mandarin. I cannot believe how well written Trevor Slattery was of all characters. His arc is genuinely beautiful. When we first see Trevor in this show, he is willing to do whatever it takes to distance himself from the Mandarin. He takes Cleary's deal without a second of hesitation. He does not want to go back to jail. But deep down, Trevor is a much more broken character than he lets on. He doesn't want to go back to jail because he's ashamed of his past and has to lie to make himself feel better. The thought of ever going back to this place that makes him confront his issues day by day is haunting to him. So he will happily lie and play this role as a damage control agent because it's easier for him to pretend to be someone else than live in the reality of who he actually is. It all comes full circle when Trevor finally sees Simon embrace being himself, as it puts him in a position where he's willing to embrace his history as the Mandarin to save his friend's career. If Simon can go through the tough life he had and still come out embracing who he is, then so can Trevor. That sacrifice of his freedom is earned because of how well the series did, making them feel like a genuine pair of friends. Everything might have been built on a lie, but that connection was there, and Trevor finally does the right thing, prioritizing his friendship over his freedom. That scene on the phone between the two had me tearing up, I swear. And then I started cheering like a madman alone in my room at 1 AM, seeing the Mandarin give another lesson again. Iron Man 3 fans never lose! That is a monumental win for me! Wonder Man is better as a show because it takes place in the MCU, and they're able to play with that history in a really interesting and rewarding way. People are going to say this show is unlike anything else in the MCU, and it doesn't feel like an MCU series, and that's definitely true. But I think it's the fact that it does take place in the MCU is what makes it so special. This story could not exist anywhere else, and we are all better off for it. Alright, let me take a step back from overanalyzing all these character arcs for a second and talk about my favorite episode of the season, Doorman. This episode is entirely dedicated to explaining the Doorman clause, the agreement actors have to sign that they don't have superpowers because of what happened to Damar Davis, the guy from earlier when I started going crazy about Cloak and Dagger. Stylistically alone, this episode is one of the coolest things Marvel has ever done. Obviously, the black and white is very artsy and I love the look of it all, but the camera work in this episode is incredible. The Dark Force sequences and the way they lean into the horror behind his powers goes so hard and is one of the coolest things we've ever seen in the entire MCU. The fast cuts as he's trying to figure out what's going on around him create such an uneasy sense of tension. And it does a really great job showing how hard of a time he's having controlling these abilities, which then foreshadows this big tragedy at the end of the episode. What a masterpiece of an episode. I am so glad that they took the time to tell this story. Thank God we're free of the 6-episode format because we never would have gotten something as impactful as this there. Instead, Marvel makes the bold decision to stop halfway through the season and give us an episode entirely dedicated to a character we've never heard of just to explain a clause. But I think it is incredibly important to do. It's such a drastic status quo shift to show that people with superpowers are being outlawed in the MCU like this, so I think it's important we see why. Seeing Damar go from this guy who was down on his luck but still happy making a living to an overnight success as these new abilities both save and ruin his life is so hard to watch. It's a really great commentary on how actors, specifically people of color, get placed in this box and society doesn't let them be anything else other than what they're told. Damar wants to be taken seriously as a real actor, but the world just laughs at him and pokes fun at his expense because to them, he's just gonna be the guy who has superpowers and goes ding dong. It is an entire episode dedicated to the corruption of fame and how the industry will exploit you as they chew you up and spit you out. Seeing him hit these high highs, like starring in the movie Cash Grab, which is a great joke, only for the public to stop caring about him like that and watch him fall back on hard times having to take these product deals that he knows he can't trust. It's really sad and even more well written. There's nothing more depressing either than the fact that when he finally gets a hand reached out to him from Josh Gad, as they're going to make a sequel to the movie that launched his career, the anxiety of being put in that spotlight again, having to go back in the box he tried so hard to fight out from, accidentally make Josh Gad disappear and die maybe? It's crazy. That being said, I definitely don't think he's dead and is probably just trapped in the Dark Force dimension, so here's how we get a Cloak and Dagger special dedicated to them rescuing Josh Gad. This is my agenda and exactly how we get them back in the MCU. And hopefully they can rescue Doorman as well, because the fact that he's now living out the rest of his life being monitored and experimented on by the Department of Damage Control is horrifying. He finally got his big break, and it was the worst thing that ever happened to him. The word tragedy doesn't even begin to put into perspective how sad this episode was, and it's by far one of the best things Marvel Studios has ever done. I did not have the MCU taking this obscure Great Lakes Avengers character and making him so interesting and complex on my bingo card, but I'm so happy they did it. Now, please find a way to make a Great Lakes Avengers series out of this. I don't know how we get there, but I need it. The people yearn for more Doorman. While I think it's very unlikely we'll ever get a Great Lakes Avengers show, I do want to talk about the future of Wonder Man as a character and the ending of the series, because I think it leaves the door open for a lot of interesting stories to tell with this character. First of all, Simon saving Trevor from damage control was the perfect ending to the show. I really love how both Trevor and Simon sacrifice something just to save the other. Trevor giving up his freedom while Wonder Man becomes a fugitive now just to rescue the one friend he ever had now that he fully knows he can trust him. Simon using his new skills and fame as an actor to shadow an employee at damage control just to break Trevor out was genius. I love the way they build up to it. Immediately dropping us into this setting with no idea what's going on as we slowly find out more and more information until it becomes clear that Simon is planning a prison break. It's a very fun way to keep Simon as this morally gray character to an extent. That was an immensely satisfying ending that felt truly earned and paid off all the character moments we saw between them over the course of the series. And while I don't need any teasers for the future, that's not gonna stop me from speculating. Simon is now seemingly going to be a wanted fugitive from the Department of Damage Control, more than ever now that he has publicly broken somebody out of prison. He's probably not going to have much of a career in acting anymore, right? I mean, then again, we've all seen actors in real life come back from much worse. If Jared Leto can have a career in Hollywood, but not Simon Williams, something is deeply wrong. But I do love the idea of a second season where Simon is on the run, but now he's one of the most recognizable people in the country, so that becomes damn near impossible. I just hope that at the end we get back to the status quo where Simon is an actor again, because I think that's a really interesting place for him to be in the MCU that sets him apart from pretty much everybody else. They did have Agent Cleary tease the idea that they can use an asset like Simon, so maybe he takes a deal similar to the one Trevor did to be Damage Control's puppet to exonerate both of their records. It's an easy way to wipe the slate clean and would be fascinating to see Simon have to work with this department that wants him dead. He started out as a villain in the comics, and I kind of like that this series could potentially go in this direction where he's working with an antagonistic force like Damage Control in the future. Maybe he becomes their puppet and they send him after another powered individual and we get to see that dynamic play out on screen. Ideally though, this could also be a good jumping off point for Simon to become a proper hero now that he doesn't have acting to rely on. Maybe he just gets away with it and uses his status as a hero to make himself and Trevor good guys in the court of public opinion. And if he wants to do that, I know just the place for it. We need to get Simon on the West Coast Avengers. If he joins a superhero team that basically puts him above the law and he can just have this group of people protecting him because they know he's doing the right thing. And the public wouldn't turn on him. The idea of the Wonder Man actor becoming a real-life Wonder Man superhero would be the best possible publicity you could get. I think that seeing Simon in a West Coast Avengers project is the next natural step for him as he embraces his role as a hero, all while finally putting himself out there and making more friends. Especially other West Coast Avengers member, Kate Bishop. That's right, this whole video was a way for me to get Kate Bishop in the MCU again. And it's not just me saying it either, as Andrew Guest directly mentioned he wants that team up to happen. So here we go, Marvel, we gotta get on this. We need a West Coast Avengers movie with at least Kate Bishop and Wonder Man. If you're gonna take your sweet time on that Young Avengers project, you better at least give us West Coast Avengers so I can see Kate Bishop once more. So everyone, please go watch Wonder Man so we can guarantee his future in the MCU, hopefully get a second season, and then see him team up with other characters like Kate Bishop, because this series is great and by far one of the best MCU projects. Oh my god, I almost forgot. I promised I would answer if this is the best MCU show. Talking only shows produced by Marvel Studios, so no Daredevil, because that's obviously the winner. I think that Wonder Man would honestly, as of right now, probably be my second favorite MCU show. Loki is still number one for me. That was a religious experience, but I think Wonder Man might be my second favorite. It might just be the recency bias talking, but I think this show lives up to that standard. Wonder Man is a great show that acts as a love letter to the film industry, the superhero genre, and the idea of friendship as a whole. It is an incredibly endearing story about a struggling actor trying to make it in the MCU, and exactly the kind of series that the universe needed right now. I hope that we're able to get so many more shows like this, because I was able to see myself on screen and it filled my head with so much wonder. Man. California. Okay, but why don't you let me know down below what you thought about Wonder Man? I would genuinely love to hear what everyone has to say and continue the conversation down below. And while you're at it, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you don't do it, I'm gonna trap you in the Dark Force dimension with Josh Gad. Yeah, I know, so you can either subscribe now or live the rest of your life in eternity with asshole Josh Gad.